Hello and welcome. I hope you're all well wherever you are. There are hundreds of you tuning in from around the world this evening for this special event with the How To Academy. Joining us tonight is Swedish communication expert Thomas Erikson. Thomas's first book, Surrounded by Idiots, was a runaway success, selling over 2.5 million copies worldwide and has been translated into a whopping 42 languages. His new book, Surrounded by Psychopaths, takes his innovative approach to color coding personality types and looks at how our traits can be exploited by others. In this talk tonight, he will help you to identify the psychopaths in your life and give you the tools to handle even the most skilled manipulators. Thomas will talk for about 40 minutes and then answer your questions at the end. So if you have any queries, please put them in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Thomas Erikson.
Good evening, everybody. Very nice to, well, I can't see you, but I can feel you, so to speak. Let's begin, shall we? Like this. No, okay. Maybe like this instead. I call the psychopath the Lord of Chaos, and I will tell you why that is. One thing we have to do before we actually jump into this topic is to address one thing that is actually going on as we speak, namely the American presidential election. I know not everybody lives in the United States of America, and I understand this, but they actually affect us quite a bit. And what is happening over there is of great interest for all of us in our part of the world as well. The thing is, when you talk about American presidents, or let's say the American president, singularis, what can you say about the American president? Well, a lot of things has been said about him, as he is a womanizer with problems. He's hiring his brother-in-law and his sister and his wife and everybody. A lot of things can be said about this gentleman, actually. Not so much about his politics. I will not comment that at all. And I can tell you that it's interesting and fascinating to follow the debate, I would say. And who knows where it's going to stop. But the thing is this, a lot of people has a lot of issues with the American president. And let's see if we can find some clues to why that actually is. But psychopaths. What does a psychopath actually look like? Is this a psychopath? Or is this a psychopath? This one, maybe? Well, this is obviously Hannibal Lecter, who is not even real, actually, written by Thomas Harris many years ago. And this is Ted Bundy, and this is Jeffrey Dahmer. Those guys, they are also serial killers. The fascinating and scary thing is that they are real. And some of the things they did actually, Thomas Harris couldn't invent. So Hannibal Lecter is sort of a nice guy compared to this, actually. But it's not only men who are psychopaths. There's women too. This is Mary Bell. She killed her first victim at the age of 11. 2 little boys, actually, and then she killed again and again and again. She's in her 60s now, and this is Countess Elizabeth Bathory, who killed 600 people, many of them personally, because she actually enjoyed it. And that is sort of a disturbing thought, don't you think? So it's not only men, but I can reveal this already now, most psychopaths are men, actually, like this guy. AlDunlap, who hasn't killed anyone as far as I know, but we'll get back to him in a short while. But what is a psychopath, really? This Lord of Chaos, this toxic character who actually you've been told about, I guess. But psychopaths isn't what we usually think. You can say, in my experience, we use the word psychopathy in the wrong way many times. Maybe somebody cut you off in traffic and say, oh, that bloody psychopath, you know, or somebody's really nasty to you at work. Oh, he's a damn psychopath. Probably not. No, they're not that common. But some people are psychopaths, and some people are showing psychopathic traits, which is actually something else. The most, I would say, the best, or maybe the most experienced psychopath researcher in the world is called Robert Hare. He's a Canadian psychologist who has been working with psychopaths for close to 50 years now. He's probably knows more about psychopaths than the rest of us together. And he has defined this psychopathic trait list, checklist. And as you can see, there's a lot of things on it: charm, grandiosity, promiscuity, breaking parole if they are criminals, impulsivity. So there's many different things. But the interesting thing with this list of characteristics is actually that we can all underscore some of them. I mean, all of us has, not taken responsibility for our actions all the time. Some of us are lying sometimes. I'm afraid that is this. And I'm pretty sure that all of you who is listening now are pretty charming. I'm pretty sure of that. We sometimes need stimulation, all of us. Does that make us psychopaths? No, it doesn't. The thing is this: you can be a psychopath. You can score in a certain amount of points on the list, but you can show psychopathic traits without being a psychopath, as in being charming or lying and so on. But the more traits you have in a higher frequency, the more psychopathic you become. And then there is a clinical definition of what is a psychopath. The top score is 40 points. At 25, you're a psychopath, according to the latest psychology research. Interesting enough, in the UK, actually, it is 25. In the States, it is 30. Interesting. Let me get back to that too. Let's take just a couple of traits. We can't go through all of them, but a couple of the ones that you actually may see in your daily life. I mean, take a look at this guy, Prince Charming. I mean, look at him. He looks so good. He has this friendly, nice gesture. His posture is nicely dressed. He's well calmed. He's nicely shaved, and I'm sure he smells nice also. Who wouldn't trust this kind of guy? I mean, he looks so good, and he's so nice to you, and friendly and kind and helpful. And this is one of the most dangerous traits with psychopaths, because they make you trust them by being helpful and entertaining and taking care of you to begin with, at least. So they will actually try to charm you. And again, you are not a psychopath because you are charming, but you are usually charming when you are a psychopath. Even, I mean, a guy like Ted Bundy, the serial killer, he actually was known for being such a nice guy. Nobody could actually believe he had killed anyone. And then he actually killed several people, mutilated them, a lot of nasty stuff. That's one trait that we need to keep track on. Manipulation. There are several ways to manipulate somebody, and a lot of people are good manipulators as well. That doesn't make them psychopaths. But the thing is, this manipulation is the thing that can be, let's say, developed beyond your imagination. And they use so many different techniques. And I have studied psychopathy for 5 years, something like that. And I have come to the conclusion that there is some sort of modus operandi when it comes to psycho. I think there is a handbook out there. A lot of them, maybe all of them, is using the same kind of manipulation techniques. And therefore, it's easy to say, this is what they actually do. I will give you 5 examples of manipulation techniques in a short while. And if you have a pencil and paper, please write them down, because you might recognize them at work, for instance, or maybe in your family if you're unlucky. And then, of course, we have this thing with liars. They lie, and they don't look like Pinocchio, because you can't see they lie, because they are really good at lying. They lie so good that you can't see it in their faces. And they get no stress. They don't feel stress for lying. They can lie to a policeman. They don't care, because they don't feel anything. They can be pulled over in their car, and what I would say, oh no, there's a full on, I can't believe I'm getting pulled over. They would just stop and say, hello, officer, what's going on? They can have a dead body in the trunk. Doesn't matter. They don't care. And they lie because they can lie. Sometimes psychopaths actually lie because it's fun to see how much can they get away with. And they will lie to you because, well, why not? It's fun to lie. Let's see how stupid you actually are and how much you actually believe in. This is probably not a picture of a psychopath because they do not feel remorse or regret. They never regret anything because that requires a conscience which they don't have. So that is not a proper picture of them. They don't feel anything, they feel no empathy, they don't feel they can understand you. But there's a big difference between understanding and feeling. If they do something bad to another person, hey, that's his fault, and I'm falling in that sort of silly trap. Why didn't he think things through much more? And sometimes you meet people that you actually can't believe. Did he actually do this? How can he get away with it? How does he sleep at night? If it's a psychopath, I can tell you, they sleep like babies. All of them. Trust me. And yes, psychopaths are, I'm sorry to say, they are parasites. They don't take the bill if they can get away with it. They have forgotten their wallet. They would like you to buy their lunch. They would like you to open up your wallet. They would like you to pay for their rent. And they don't ask you, let's say, hey, could you give me £100 because I'm sort of short on cash this month. You wouldn't give £100 to a stranger now, would you? Instead, they say, could you give me £1 and see where are your limits? And then if you say, I can give you £1, and then they ask you for £2 and £5, and then they will just test where's your limit, how far can they go. If you say stop to begin with, then you know you will get, you don't have to pay for their bets, so to speak. They are usually having trouble with paying their taxes. A lot of their bills isn't paid for, and then they need a partner usually to pay for their own, let's say, entertainment, actually. And they can usually not say what they did with the money. I have a lot of stories in my email box, actually, that tells me about people who has been used by psychopaths when it comes to financials. A lot of people have gone really, really broke because the parasites, they will never, ever pay you back. That is not a part of their plan at all. So that's 5 major traits within 20. Why do people become psychopaths? From where does this come? Well, these days we know it comes from their brains, actually. This is 2 brains that has been scanned in a PET scan, not a PET scan as in a furry animal, but a PET scan. And as you can see, never mind the colors, as you can see, these 2 brains does not look the same. This is a sort of kind of, let's call it a normal brain. This is a psychopath brain. And as you can see, the red arrow there, what is lacking is a piece of the amygdala, which is a part of the brain that is actually adjusting, it's the emotional center of the brain, in short words. And as you can see, the psychopath is lacking big areas in the amygdala, which means they don't have the capacity of feeling anything. They can't feel anything, hence the no remorse and no regret thing. They just don't, they can understand it on an intellectual level, but they don't feel anything at all. And this can actually be checked a little bit, because when you meet somebody who well, let's say you sit down and you chat with somebody, with a person, and you watch their eyes. Usually when a psychopath is trying to figure things out, he do something that other people don't. This is a clue that you can actually pay attention to. Usually people will look you in your eyes when you are telling them something emotional, when you are showing signs of let's say, some strong feelings of any kind. The psychopath will not look in your eyes because it doesn't tell them anything. Instead, they will look at your mouth, which is kind of interesting, because who does that really? But that is just the exception. Otherwise, what a psychopath usually do is stare into your eyes like this. Usually when you sit down and have a conversation with somebody, you know, for 10 minutes, you don't look the other person in his eyes or her eyes all the time. You will take a look to the side, you know, and you will see something else coming around, you know, and you just, well, you will look a bit up and then something. But a psychopath will usually look into your eyes all the time. It's called the long gaze, which they usually do because they don't know it's rude to stare into somebody's eyes all the time. So they do it just anyway, which is a really important thing to recognize. And you might have sensed that in a conversation somewhere sometime in your life, somebody actually looking really intensely into your eyes, and it felt bad. People usually don't do that. But as I said, psychopaths don't know what's right and what's wrong. They have to learn this. Somebody has to teach them, actually. So, speaking of normal people, so I brought that subject up. As Esme mentioned before, I have been working with a color system called the disc profile. Why I bring this up is because we have to take a step back a little bit and see how normal people actually are wired. I am promoting my book now, Surrounded by Psychopaths, but I wrote another book before called Surrounded by Idiots, which brings up the topic of the disc profile with the 4 colors. Red, yellow, sorry, that's the wrong order, that's the right order. Red, yellow, green, and blue. So I'm going to give you a short recap of what this is and why it's important when it comes to psychopathy. The thing is this: usually we can divide people's, let's say, behavioral traits, looking at who's task-oriented and who is people-oriented, who is extrovert and who is introvert. And it is interesting to see because people are different, and you knew that already, right? But how different in what way, and let's say, what signs is there? What clues can you see? If you're really good at you're taking good notes here, you can take really fast notes actually, because here they are. So red, yellow, green, and blue. Okay, there it goes. No, sorry, that was a joke, a bad one. But just a couple of traits when it comes to red behavior. These are the dominant people, the decisive, the goal-oriented ones who like to compete. They are really competitive. They can look you into your eyes and say, yeah, I'm a really competitive person, you know, yeah, like this. And you might feel a little bit distressed because, ooh, that's scary. I am not a competitive person. And they are always in a hurry, always in a hurry. Hurry, hurry, hurry. Well, maybe we're not in a hurry, but we can speed up things a little bit. Couldn't we? We should do that, you know, we should speed up because life is short. Hey, push the accelerator to the floor. Hey, what are you waiting for? You know, bam, up and go. Keep it running, you know, because they like action. They like action. They hate passivity or sitting down, waiting. That's the worst thing they can actually get into. That's a bad thing for them. The next color is the yellow one. The yellow one, they are also extrovert, but people-oriented. And they are smiling and positive, optimistic, very social, outgoing. Hi, how are you? Oh, it's so great to see you. Let me tell you something about me. Usually sentences start with me, or I, or something, because they are sort of ego-focused, not as in egoistic. That is not the same thing, but ego-centered. They could be, yes, I have to say. But they are positive and enthusiastic, you know, and happy, and everything is great, and the sun is shining. Even though you might say, well, it's actually quite cloudy today. Yeah, but the sun is always shining somewhere. You have a friend like this also, right? It's hard to be angry with it because they are so friendly and so nice to be around. They make you feel good, right? These are the yellow people. You have to love them because they're really lovable, you know? Creative. Some of them haven't touched ground since the late 90s, to be honest. How about the green ones? Well, here we have to take it down a notch. These are people who are stable. They are introvert and people-oriented, caring, sharing, very friendly, but in a more calmer way. Good listeners. They actually hear what you say, and they will remember what you say, especially if it was something bad. Especially if it was something bad about the green person. Then it will be registered and never forgotten, ever, actually. Good team players, though. Really good with other people. They like to be in part of a group. They don't like to be in some sort of individualistic sports or something. They like to be doing, well, playing football or you know, let's say ice hockey, or I don't know, ice hockey. Does anybody play ice hockey where you live? But you know, together with other people, that is the clue. They love to work with other people. They do not do solo sort of things. They love to be in the team, because the team is everything. And they're really patient, you know, and so they don't like loud voices, and they loathe changes. Changes. Who asked for changes? It was so good as it was, you know. Well, maybe it wasn't good, maybe it didn't work at all, but hey, who's complaining? You know what you have, but not what you're gonna get if you change things. And the grass is not greener on the other side. That's a myth. It's a lie. Don't fall for it. I'm staying here. That's the green one. And then we have the blue character here, as you can see. This is the, let's say, the tax accountant, the lawyer, the engineer, you know, cautious, meticulous, detail-oriented, details. You need to be keeping control of the details, you know, and they put everything in Excel sheets, you know, because you can actually prove yourself by making diagrams and use numbers and do things, because if you can count it, you can put it in there. They think a lot, you know, and they sit there and they can be really introvert and not saying anything at all, to be honest. And sometimes you would like to shake them, say, hey, are you still in there? I am thinking. Usually stone-faced like this. No need for, you know, just babbling because everybody else is babbling. I can sit there really quiet and just bide my time, so to speak. So maybe you now have started to see faces, people that you meet in your daily life, at work or at home, family members, who knows? Did you see your own face? Usually people are a combination of two colors. That's usually the case. If you add another color on top of the first one, you will get a little bit different, sort of a hybrid behavior, if you know what I mean. But usually you can see one or two colors strongly in a person's behavior. This is not, and I have to emphasize this is not about personalities, it is about behaviors. That is two different things. Personalities you cannot see. You will try to understand them based on the behaviors that you actually see. You can see and hear a behavior, but not the personality. Anyways, usually you are a combination of two colors. That is the most common thing, statistically, at least. So these are good things about them, as you can see, and every coin has two sides. So if this is the good stuff, this is the not so good stuff. Sometimes actually they perform not so well. It could depend on the company, could depend on the environment around them. But sometimes all of them are showing things that might not be as charming as it could be, perhaps. So, an example how it could look. Emails. Here you can find clues. I mean, take a look at this. I mean, what else is there to say? What more could you say? Be there, right? What more could you say? Well, you could say a lot of things, actually, to be honest. You can speak and talk and write. This is somebody who is using his thinking, and it runs just through the hands and into the computer screen or into the cell phone, you know, blah, 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 like this. Like my sister. When I get a text message from her, it's 5 phones long, you know. It never stops. I scroll and I scroll, and I usually say, okay, she hates okay, you know. But the problem with this email is the information you need is in there somewhere. So you have to go through it all. So it is in there somewhere. Yeah, it could be there as well. Could be. So much to, you know, keep track on these days. The green email also, it has a special kind of sense to it. It's a special kind of tonality. And all the blue email as well, it's let's say, many words, it's as long as the yellow one, but as you can see, it's very different words. It has been formulated in a really different manner. And most important of all, the attachments are there. It isn't that strange. Attach, click, done. How difficult is this, really? These are the basics. So what's the connection to psychopathy? Well, it turns out different people fall for different kinds of manipulation techniques. And this is interesting. If you recognize yourself within one or maybe two of the colors, you might recognize the weak spots within you, or you might not. And here is the danger. If you know your weaknesses, you can sort of close them down or work on them, and shut the doors around you so you are not as easily to get to. Because the psychopath, he sees your weaknesses like a wolf sees a hurt sheep somewhere in the herd. They can smell weak people. I don't know how they do it, but I know they do. They look for weak spots and they will find them. The weak spot within a red person is usually losing control. They hate losing control. They need to be in control. If they lose control, they get really stressed and really they can lose their temper a bit, and they can show some anger, I have to say. Yes, that is true. But the thing is, it's an open door for a manipulator. Even though it's maybe not be a full-blown psychopath, it's actually, you can be manipulated if you don't know. The yellow people, they are really sensitive for this social exclusion, not to be a part of the gang, so to speak. It's not like being in the team, as I mentioned, with the green person. It's more about being accepted socially, so to speak. The yellow people are the ones who are hurting most during this lockdown that we are actually experiencing right now. They are suffering from not being out there and having conversations in reality, for not, hanging out with their friends and so on. Am I anyone anymore? Because do you see me? If they feel excluded, they are weak. Trust me. And again, the manipulator will look for these people, and they know exactly how to use them. Green people, they don't like conflicts. Conflicts, oh, that's bad. Only troublemakers use conflicts as a tool, shouting and screaming and yelling at people. That is really bad behavior. You shouldn't do that, If you yell at a green person, he will back away. And that is really easy to check if you are conflict avert. And again, the psychopath will know. The blue ones who need to be experts, specialists. To look like a fool is really bad for them. To be, let's say, somebody tells them you were wrong. Your facts doesn't add up, your calculation is bad, it doesn't work like that. That's really bad for let's say, the blue ego. Then they don't like this. So you have to be aware of this if you are mostly blue in your character. And what we also need to understand, that is that manipulation comes in many forms. One of the most important one to understand is what we call love bombing. And it sounds really strange when you say it, love bombing. What is that anyway? Well, love bombing is exactly what it sounds like. When somebody's bombing you with, oh, I love you, I like you, you're so good, you're great, you're the most fantastic person I ever met, I have to be with you. And the one who is actually within 2 weeks tell you, we are soulmates. Oh yes, I have to move in with you because I love you, They bring you flowers and presents. And if you are not used to this, you will fall for, because, oh, this feels so good. This is fascinating. Somebody who actually loves me. But, if they want to get married or, let's say, engaged in some way within a month, it's not for real, because that is not how it works. This we do know. Nobody gets married after 30 days of dating. That is impossible. But they might propose within 30 days because you have something they want. And they need marriage perhaps to take it. Something called arbitrary positive praise. Positive feedback is always good, right? Well, is it really? It depends on when it comes. If you do something really good, and let's say your manager gives you positive feedback, praise, say, oh, that's really good. But let's say, I mean, the key is in the word arbitrary. If you get positive praise without exactly knowing why that is. And let's say that you have gotten so much positive feedback from your boss, and all of a sudden, boom, it just goes away. Now what? It felt so good, and now it feels so bad. And now he's giving you the cold shoulder. You don't know anything until you do what he wants you to do. And then you will do it again and again and again. It also works with arbitrary negative critique. The same way they're giving you negative feedback all the time, bad stuff. You did this, you did that was so bad of you. And that because it's arbitrary, you can't foresee when it's going to happen. You don't know, did I do good this week, or did I do good this week, or did I do bad, or what's going on here, you know? And they can take it away and they can add it. And the most dangerous thing is when you combine those two. You combine arbitrary positive praise and negative critique. Then you will never know what's going to happen. All of a sudden, you don't know, are you stepping on landmines, or will he give you a cake, or what's going to happen? And please make this notion, this is really important. It has nothing to do with your performance. It's only when the psychopath wants something for you, or want to change, or sort of that you should adapt your behavior in whatever direction they need you to do. It has nothing to do with what you actually do. And it will leave you in total confusion. A lot of bosses, managers, leaders, well, not leaders, managers and bosses, they do this without understanding it's what they do, but it's a really, really nasty manipulation technique. Gaslighting. Maybe you heard that word, maybe you haven't. That is something I mentioned, leave you in confusion. This is about confusion, totally. You know, this is a technique that makes, let's say, the victim not trusting their own sanity anymore, maybe, and put you in a sort of a cage. Usually, the psychopath or the manipulator do something really bad, and then you confront them, and he will say, I didn't do that. And you know, I saw you, I know you did. No, I didn't, because, and then you will sort of get yourself stuck in some strange, let's say, conversation about, you know, something else. Or maybe they said something and you confront them and I didn't say that. And there are so many things they actually can do in order to confuse you and convince you that you're the crazy one and you're the problem and you're a bad person and you're so mean to me, you know. And they are putting out all these things only in order to make your perception of reality sort of smacked, because it's so hard to keep track on all these things. One clue that you might think, if you are in a relationship with somebody and you feel you have to record your conversations, that's a warning sign. Don't record, go away, leave instead of recording. Because if you show them the recording, they will only tell you, how could you do that? Recording our conversation, how bad a person are you really? All of this it's a kind of, well, let's call it smoke screens then. Everything, all the purpose is to make you doubt your own memory, to make you doubt what's happening and what's not happening and so on. So they will do everything to confuse you. And psychopaths do things that are so strange and so weird and so twisted. You can't even imagine it's actually happening, but it is happening. And they don't feel, again, anything. That is just the way it is. And remember this, we can all be manipulated. It doesn't matter what color or what colors you have, we can all be manipulated. Even the most experienced psychopath researchers has gotten manipulated several times, even though they knew they were working with a psychopath. Strange, huh? Okay, so One question I usually get when I am out giving lectures on this topic is, how far can an intelligent psychopath actually take himself? How far can they go? That's a good question. Let's say unintelligent psychopaths, they see Rolex on your wrist downtown, and they will go up to you and smack you on the head and take the Rolex, so they will end up here. That's why about in the industrialized world, 25% of the inmates are actually psychopaths, clinical psychopaths. That's the statistics anyway. It's the same thing in Sweden, in the US, in the UK, and Germany, France. It's basically about 25%. But the smart psychopath, he wouldn't knock you on that. When he sees the Rolex, he will walk up to you and convince you to give it to him. That's the difference. A smart and intelligent psychopath, he can go, you know, really, really far in his career. He can take it all up to the top because he's really smart. Intelligence and psychopathy are not connected, but if they are, they become even more dangerous. Like this guy, for instance, Mr. AlDunlap. I showed you him to begin with. And the thing is this, he was so good at turning companies around. He was this CEO, this industrial leader, and he sort of turned companies around from great losses to great profits. And he even wrote a book called Mean Business. And I love the English language because this is not translatable into Swedish, but I mean business. It's so beautiful. It's actually, as you can see here, actually, oh, he's got this blur from the Wall Street Journal, you know. Of course, Al has another face also, because he is actually a psychopath. He has actually admitted he's a psychopath. He got the list with all the 20 traits read to him, and he said, yeah, that's right, but I call it leadership. So, you know, well, there was a book written about him as well. And as you can see here, not so flattering about Al's horrifying misdeeds, you know, so you can look that up, Chainsaw Dunlap. This is an example of a psychopath who took it really, really far. He went really far. It's interesting. But are they only evil? Are there not any good things with a psychopath? Anything? Depends, actually. Because, you know, they are pragmatic. They have courage. They take risks. They don't feel emotional, you know, disturbance anytime. They don't get stressed up or anything. They don't procrastinate. They act because they are sort of impulsive. And if you add the no empathy on top of this, you get maybe, let's say, this guy. Maybe you didn't think about him, but hey, he's one of the good ones. He's on our side, so we like him. But hey, let's be honest. This is a serial womanizer and a serial killer and a liar and a pathological manipulator. But hey, he's 007, right? Sometimes you can actually use the psychopathic traits for good deeds, actually. But it's sort of hard to control them, as you might see from 20 movies or so. So the question remains, how far can they go? And to wrap things up a little bit here, how far can they go? Well, we can always take a look at this gentleman here. This is Kevin Dutton. He's a psychologist and a lecturer and a writer, an author. He has done a lot of really serious research on psychopathic leaders, focused specifically on psychopathic leaders. And if I tell you that he found that this gentleman here was a psychopath, will you be surprised? I guess not. Stalin as well, and Idi Amin, of course, and not to forget Henry VIII, to be honest. And that takes us back to where we began, actually, by looking at the presidential election campaign in the US. Because the president, as we saw before, is he trustworthy? Well, who am I to say? I have never been there. I have never met the gentleman. But what we need to understand, this list is not about Mr. Trump. This is a list that defines a totally different, actually, American president from the history. This is what Kevin Dutton defined as the worst psychopath in the presidential line altogether, namely Mr. John F. Kennedy. He scored the highest. He won the contest, most psychopathic, risk taker, womanizer, liar, a lot of things, putting his brothers in the office and so on and so on. Number 2 on the list of psychopathic presidents was this gentleman here. I did not do that with that woman. This assessment took place in 2016, which was actually during the previous presidential election campaign. That was when Mr. Trump actually was running for president. He scored rather high on the list, but he wasn't the 2 ones to the left. They won the contest. No contest at all, actually, because Trump got some points, but actually so did Hillary Clinton, almost as many as Mr. Trump. So who knows? These were the 2 candidates in the previous election, Trump and Hillary Clinton, both rather high on the psychopathic checklist. I haven't seen any assessment on Mr. Joe Biden, so I can't actually help you there. But this might be of some sort of academic interest, because we usually don't meet presidents in our daily work, in our daily life. We usually meet the psychopath looking like you and I, feeling like you and I well know, but behaving like they're feeling as we do, talking like we do, having similar work like we do, similar interests, but they are not like us. How do you protect yourself from the daily, let's say, from the average psychopath? The first thing you have to do is to understand how to recognize the psychopathic traits. You can do that by reading a book or taking a lecture, or finding a lot of material online. There are so many sources to actually gain knowledge from. But you have to increase your self-awareness, whether you use the disc profile, the color system, or some other system, that doesn't matter. But you need to understand which are your weakest spots, because that's where the manipulator will push in the knife and twist it around. And you need to understand where these spots are. And of course, you have to decide how much self-respect are you actually worth. Let's say that you are actually living with a psychopath. The only thing that you can do is to leave. That's the sad thing about it, because you can never change them. You cannot cure them, you cannot treat them, you can leave, because this is a game you can never win. There it is. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you so much for that, Thomas. I'm sure we've got lots of great questions coming in. That was very enlightening, very exciting. So let's start with some of these questions then. We have one of our first questions is a narcissistic person the same as a psychopath?
That's a good question. The short answer is no, it's not the same thing, but every psychopath is a narcissist, but not all narcissists are psychopaths. Narcissism is a couple of psychopathic, let's say, characteristics, but it's not the same thing. It's on the psychopathic side, but it's more let's say, not so severe mental condition, because it is a personality disorder. It's not a mental illness, to remember. So yeah, they are connected.
A common question which is popping up is, what exactly is the difference between a sociopath and a psychopath?
The difference between a sociopath and a psychopath, well, they behave basically the same. A psychopath is born, as I mentioned before, it's a part of how their brain are wired. They are born with these, let's say, they are lacking functions in the amygdala, which I said was the emotional center of the brain. I am of course simplifying things, but basically that is what it is. The sociopath is more made, because if you have a person who has been under really, really tough circumstances during his childhood and adolescence, for instance, and if you are raised in a really rough environment, you can actually be treated the way that you sort of develop psychopathic traits. That is really common when it comes to criminality, or in war situations. You can actually train people to sort of forget how it is to feel, to be honest. And there you have the sociopath.
Thank you for that. An anonymous attendee has asked, are narcissists and psychopaths both caused by the same brain deficits?
Well, that's a tricky question to answer, actually, because psychopaths, they can be, as I mentioned, the brain scanning and all these things. You can see what's lacking in their brains. Narcissism isn't as severe as narcissists also lack empathy, but it's not as bad as within the psychopathic mind. The thing is, narcissistic behaviors you can see within a lot of people that would never get the diagnosed clinical narcissism. And the research here, the science is not settled on this topic. And the psychologists world over, they cannot agree exactly on these things. So therefore, I'm looking a bit to the ceiling here to see. But the thing is, we know actually less about narcissism, because sort of a lot of people behaving in narcissistic way in our society today, self-centered people, and and me, and more aggressiveness and so on, not necessarily clinical narcissism. So these are tougher to define, to be honest.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Jeanette, and they ask, how does the long gaze work in cultures like Japan, where any eye contact can be rude?
Hi, Jeanette. Good question. And I have to be honest, I don't know if I am able to answer the question. I've never been to Japan, but it's correct, as you say. Japan and Sweden are societies that is actually a bit similar. Maybe it sounds strange too, but as I am a Swede, and I know some people who are living in Japan, but I've never been there myself. Usually people are polite, don't like rudeness, and sort of, let's say, conflict avert. Swedes, as do the people from Japan, we sort of close our fist in the pocket and then we say everything is okay over here, That's what we do. And staring into somebody's eyes is considered rude here and there. How they react, I actually don't know. I don't think they will be forced to do harakiri on the square. I don't think that, but I don't know exactly how it's been. But the thing is, we know psychopaths are in all societies all over the planet. So there are Japanese psychopaths as well. That is absolutely so. This we know, actually, for a fact.
Thank you. Natalie asks our next question, and she says, is it normal for psychopaths to cut their victims off, or if the victim catches the psychopath out for lying?
It depends on the situation. If let's say that you confront a psychopath with a lie and say, hey, you lied there and I know it. It depends on the situation. He will fight you. I say he because there's more psychopaths. Well, 3 out of 4 psychopaths are men, and 1 out of 4 is a woman. So I say he there. But he will probably fight you, actually, if you have something more that he wants. If he can sort of drain you for money or some, whatever he wants you to give him, sex or friendship or recommendations or whatever it is, he will try to take it from you. And the interesting thing with a psychopath is that you can sit in a room with 10 people and the psychopath is going on and lying and everybody can hear he's lying. And he might even know they know he's lying, but he won't stop anyway. That's what's so fascinating about this. They don't care, And they will try to twist your mind. You didn't hear me correctly, An example, I have if I may, I have a lady friend. She said her ex-husband. He said, "I'm going out with Eric tonight, so don't wait up." Okay, and he got late. 1 o'clock in the morning. She called Eric and said, "Hey, when are you getting home?" And he said, "Well, I've never been out. Your husband isn't here." And then when the husband comes home, and 4 o'clock in the morning, and she said, "You didn't go to Eric's, I didn't say Eric. I said Edward." And she said, "I know. He didn't say Edward, but he made me think I am sort of crazy," because they lie so frequently and they lie so thoroughly and so trustworthy, even though it sounds like a paradox, I know. And if you have been in this situation, you will start to question yourself. And that is what's so scary about this, actually.
Yeah, it sounds very unnerving. One of the questions we have from Lindsay is, She asks, if psychopaths don't care, what do they really want? What's the end goal for them?
The end goal is to take what they want. They don't care for people. They care for power. They care for let's say, attention. Therefore, you might find a lot of psychopaths in, let's say, Hollywood, in the politics, higher up the higher in the hierarchy in an organization, whatever it is, you find more and more psychopaths. That's also a fact, actually. Power is their main goal. They would like to dominate everybody around them. They don't care about the individuals, but they need the individuals in order to achieve their goals, of course. Money, sex, pleasure, could be all of these things, but not human, let's say, closeness or something. That's no need for that. No.
Thank you. We're getting a lot of questions in about raising children and whether it comes from nurture or if there are any tips for interventions with children. I was wondering if you could touch on that topic to answer a few of those queries.
Well, when it comes to children, the most disturbing thought is, of course, a psychopathic child. I have received several emails on the topic. Women saying, I think my child is behaving in a really strange way. And I really feel for them, I have to admit. It's a really sad thing to understand and to let's say, to realize that a child is a psychopath or have, well, 1 or 2 or 5 or 10 psychopathic traits within their behavior. There's nothing you can do. It's not your fault. It is not about you. It's not about how you nurture them. It's not about if you breastfed them or if you gave them something else or if they got the peas or meat too early. There's nothing to do with it. It's part of the brain that actually in the exactly moment when they are created, if you know what I mean. That's when that happened. Nobody knows why it's happening, but you cannot do anything about it. The only thing we know, some researchers say, they claim that if you see, usually you can see these patterns, because you have to look for patterns before you can say, oh, this kid is a psychopath. It takes some observations, but you can if you see them, you can usually it's about 12 years of age, somewhere around there. They start to be cruel to animals, and they start to be more and more lying to you, even when it's not necessary to lie, because lying is fun, as I mentioned before. But you can't do anything. But some say that if you treat kids really in a really, let's say, lovable way, if you really treat them positively and really warm, and take them to you and not giving them all they are pointing at, because that is not the same thing as parenting, actually. Of course it isn't, you knew that. But if you show them all the love and care that you have, but then again, that's how you should treat all kids. So it doesn't make sense, right? But it is a problem. Sooner or later, a psychopathic kid will start to get himself or herself in serious trouble. That is just the way it is. And what you can see if we talk about teenagers, actually, when it comes to the girls, they will use sex as a tool more than the boys can do, which is really, really scary in many, many ways.
That's very interesting. Thank you. The next sort of branch of questions that we're getting quite a lot of, so many questions, by the way, everyone's loving your talk, is that more related to the workplace. We have a couple of people asking, if you can't leave a place of work where a psychopath is in charge and you have to work with them, what can you do? How can you work around people? How can you communicate with them differently?
You can't. It's impossible. I'm sorry to say, there is nothing, I can't sugarcoat this question. The truth is, you can never change the psychopath. There is no way to sort of smoke them out or let's say, confront them or make their boss sort of take them away and so on, because they have prepared this. They have manipulated everybody around you, actually. That is just the way it is. You cannot win this game. Trust me. And let me emphasize this, it is impossible. The situation is bad. You have to leave. I know It's easier said than done. I understand this and I respect it, but I have actually cleaned up organizations, me and one of my colleagues, a couple of times after a psychopath was done with the organization. He left voluntarily, so to speak. And it was a total mess, disaster. Nobody could do anything. That is just the way it is. It sounds dramatic, I know, but it's still the truth. You can't do anything. Here's the fly, sorry.
Following on from that, someone else asks, how can you work out that someone is manipulating you? How can you choose to leave them if you think that a psychopath is treating you well and they're charming you and praising you and doing the positive aspects too?
Okay, if I understand the question correctly, they also do positive things, but then sometimes it feels bad. Then what to do? Well, if it feels bad, it is bad. Sometimes it's hard to point your finger, that's a situation that is bad and I don't like this. And you have to look for patterns. And if there's more negative things than positive things, well, then that's the answer. You have to do something about it, right? If it's your partner, you have to get out of the relationship. This is just the way it is. You can't it's like at work. You can't change a psychopathic boss. You can't change a psychopathic wife or husband. It is what it is. But as long as you have something they won't let you go. So they will try to look like Prince Charming again, and try to manipulate. Oh, I'm so sorry, my bad, I did bad, I have to change my behavior. And then they will play perfect for I have this story, if I can make just 30 seconds. This lady sent me this email, just putting it together. She said, I dated this guy and he was bad for me, so I broke up. And then he came back to me and said, give me another chance. And he sort of developed into this perfect gentleman. He bring her flowers and remember her birthday, when doing all things, getting her home from work, and he was he did everything, and ironing her blouses and everything. And then they had a 1-year anniversary, and then said, here's the flowers. And then they put them in a trash can and said, I have been playing you all year long because I like to crush you. This is not me. You have not seen me. That's just me playing you. True story. Scary, right?
God, very scary.
Really.
I think we've got time for maybe 2 more questions. And Jeremy asks, has a specific genetic marker been identified which predisposes someone for the brain condition that you mentioned?
Short answer, no. But we do know that psychopathy is usually runs in the family, so to speak. It can jump a generation or so, jump a generation. But usually when somebody is showing these psychopathic traits, somewhere in the family line, could be an uncle, could be your grandfather, it comes from something, but we don't know exactly what it is, because you can have 2 brothers with of course the same parents, and one is a psychopath and the other one is not. So the X factor is too big here. We just don't know how it works actually.
Well, thank you very much, Thomas. I think the last question we have time for is your book available in the US?
Yes, it is. It's available since last week everywhere where you can find books, online or downtown if you dare to go there. So that is the case.
Thomas, thank you so much for joining us. I loved listening to this, and I'm sure that everyone else did. If you make notes of all of this, you'll be sent a live stream in the next couple of days, so you can return to all of those key points that Thomas says. But hope you all have a lovely evening and a great week. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.